And welcome back to the show. The digital divide remains a constant for many New Yorkers, a constant obstacle that is. And it's only seems to be intensified during the pandemic when many people are forced to work from home and then also children who have to attend school remotely. As COVID-19 makes the lives of late high school and early college students uncertain, young women of color are working towards careers in tech are facing a deeper and a more uphill battle as they try not to be left further behind an evolving new normal. Now, despite women of color making up only about 20% of the population, somehow they only account for about 4% of the workforce in technology. Our next guest, one who has literally broken the glass ceiling. She's the editor-in-chief of Laptop Magazine, which serves as the essential guide for tech-savvy consumers who depend upon expert product evaluations and user guides for cutting-edge tablets, laptops, smartphones, apps, accessories, and more. We're pleased to be joined by the editor-in-chief of Laptop Magazine, Sherri L. Smith, and good to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here, as always.
And as we look right now, I talked in the intro a little bit about that digital divide. And we know that particularly in communities of color, there is this huge digital divide. So from your professional standpoint, what can you tell us about this digital divide along racial lines?
I mean, it's such a big problem. Currently, there are about a third of homes in New York City that do not have access to broadband, let alone high-speed broadband, and it's definitely along racial and socioeconomic lines. And it's a twofold problem. It's an infrastructure problem, and it's a provider problem. So with the infrastructure, richer neighborhoods, those neighborhoods that like the NIMBY, homeless shelters and things of that nature, or like when it's like, oh well, maybe we need to adjust a test how we're testing students. Those neighborhoods tend to get the creme de la creme of all the service. So you're getting the high speed, you're getting you might get choice of service. And meanwhile, communities of color, communities that are on the lower socioeconomic totem pole are not getting those services, if any. So, for instance, I'm working from home. I pay Verizon a hefty sum to make sure that all the tech in my house is connected and it's connected in a fast rate. I am paying a hefty sum, a sum that I am blessed to be able to afford. Not everybody can afford that fee. So on top of that, like I'm also depending on where I live in Brooklyn right now. I am lucky that the area that I live in Brooklyn, there are two ISP providers. So of course, you've got Optimum and you've got Verizon. So there's a little bit of a competition. So when I left Optimum, like every 2 weeks, Optimum sends me a placard, baby, come back. I'm not coming back because the service it just wasn't for me. I'm not going to say it was trash. It just was not for me. But I have that option of choice. A lot of neighborhoods in the city across America, we are in a monopoly. So wherever you live, you are stuck with whatever service provider that you have, and they are it's at their whim to dictate the price. So if they want to jack it up, they're going to jack it up. And a lot of times, like if you can afford it, you're just going to harumph and grumble, but you're still going to pay it. But for people that can't afford it, that have to decide, well, am I going to get my necessities or am I going to get this internet access? The answer is clear. I'm going to get those necessities, and it just shuts them out of having the same opportunities that during this pandemic have been so necessary. You need internet access. I've conducted interviews with people for jobs, and they're so embarrassed because they're on laggy internet, and I'm trying to do my best to calm it because I understand, like, calm down. It's okay. It's not your fault. Like, if worst comes to worst, we can reschedule. We can do this by phone. It doesn't have to. But these are problems that I'm seeing trying to interview people. So I can only imagine what it's like being a student trying to sit in on a Zoom call, trying to do your homework or just get basic access to look up something to finish your work.
Right. I mean, but when you think about it, when the internet first started, people found it to be a luxury, right? It was a luxury. But now, pre-COVID, you can honestly say the internet is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. And when you look around in communities of color, impoverished neighborhoods, it seems as though the digital divide just keeps getting wider and wider and wider.
It absolutely does. And we need to start looking at internet as a utility, as a necessity, the same way that in the wintertime or at any time that there's a hardship and the water company can't shut off your water, they can't shut off your electricity, then there needs to be that type of approach to internet. Thankfully, New York is working on some measures to do that, particularly when it comes to affordable housing. So there are bills and legislation on the floor that's basically saying that if you are building affordable housing, that you need to make sure that it is wired, with wired to a certain extent, to provide folks living there with internet access. And the city is trying to work out a plan to work with private private companies as well as maybe doing something statewide to make sure that people have access to internet, have internet access. It's not like there are several ideas being played, like being rolled around. I don't think that there's been anything concrete yet, but at least in New York City, that is the plan to make sure, because it's obvious that as we have Google here, we have Amazon, we have all these tech companies. It's pertinent to make sure that every New Yorker has the tools that they need, whether you're working in retail or whether you're an engineer, to get online and do the things that you need to do.
When you talk about internet right now, we talk about computers, we talk about laptops. I'm laughing because I've got some kids that I stay in contact with, and they tell me, they say, hey, listen, some of us have laptops during this thing called virtual, some of us are struggling. And it seems as though, from what I gather, and I know from your vantage point, that when it comes to certain households, that even having the necessary supplies that are supposed to be provided by schools aren't even making it into the households.
Absolutely. I just read a story on CBS about a little girl who noticed that a lot of her classmates were not in class, virtual class, because they didn't have laptops. She took $200 of her own money and bought somebody a laptop. Like, the movement caught on, and she managed to raise a GoFundMe, and she's been able to donate at least 20 laptops. And yes, that's a great feel good story, but honestly, that is if you look past the larger to the larger picture of it, why is a child having to do a GoFundMe to help other children? And we live in New York City, one of the greatest cities in the world, in my opinion, definitely one of the richest, but we can't get our kids the things that we need. Like any society, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if you're not willing to help your weakest link, what does that say about you as a society?
Right. I mean, it does say a lot. I think we have a lot. We have a lot of challenges, and we understand that we have all this money, and we can find money to do whatever. It's very clear that when you look around, if it's war, if it's doing something else, we can allocate money where money needs to be allocated. This pandemic has definitely shown us that. But when it comes to the essentials and the priorities, it sometimes feels as though we're coming very far short from where we really need to be. Hopefully, as we come out of this pandemic, there won't be too many casualties by way of education and not having the access to internet, as well as to the laptops, the Chromebooks, whatever it is. But let me get your professional advice for somebody that doesn't have access to maybe a laptop. What would be the best way to get started to have some technology at home? Because for some people, This is an initial transition.
Right now, if you can't get your hands on a laptop, a cheap tablet, like a cheap tablet is better than nothing. You can get a little Bluetooth keyboard to go with it, and you can you can survive with that. You could do it with the phone as well, but a phone has a smaller screen. Unless you're willing to mirror the phone to your TV, if your TV even has that capability, that's an option as well. Um, your local libraries are always like, as we are starting to reopen, they are always a valuable resource, and they're and then there are plenty of nonprofits that will help out or have programs to get to help students in particular get the things that they need when the school system just drops the ball.
So let's talk about you for a moment. You're the editor in chief of Laptop Magazine, and we don't see many people, particularly communities of color, in the tech field. What was the impetus for you to say, hey, I want to get involved? I want to do this. I want this to be my career.
I didn't even know this job existed when I was a little girl. Like, my mother is very good to this day because she does it to my niece and my nephew. She will look at you and she will see what you're good at and she will develop that talent. My mother saw that I was good at a couple of things: reading, writing, and video games. And she nurtured those things. Like, as long as you're great, as long as my grades were good, I could have any console I wanted. She made sure that I was never at a lack for a notebook, a pen, books to read, and she just she does not believe in idle children. Like, so Saturdays she found a computer programming program that was run by a black couple, a doctor, a pair of educators. My butt and me and my brother, we were there every Saturday. Like, not only were we learning about computer science, it was also half of it was computer science, half of it was learning about your black heritage, learning about Africa, learning about all these things. So it was a great program. Like, she made like throughout the course of my education, she always made sure that there were supplements to pick up the slack where maybe it wasn't getting taught in class or it wasn't being taught here. Like, she made sure that I learned, like, I got out of my little small 1 square mile of town every now and then and saw the world beyond the 1 square mile. That was so important to know that the world is bigger than what you see right now, especially when you're a kid. All you know is your blocks and where you're allowed to go and what have you. Um, she made sure, like, when they opened up a charter school for technology, she made sure my butt was there. She made and like, there were people along the way that saw that I had this talent, and I actually went to I actually went to Rutgers thinking I was going to be a pre-med major, but math and we do not mesh. But I still had that love of writing, so I decided to come out as an English major, but I knew I wanted to write. I knew I did not want to teach. I knew I wanted to be a journalist. And I actually started out at blackplanet.com.
Really?
Yeah, OG Black Planet. I
Uh,
started out
right.
as an entertainment writer.
Wow.
Um, I interviewed the likes of Mary J. Blige and John Legend and Floetry and Beanie Man, and then layoffs happened. And thankfully, when I was at that job, I had two strong black women mentors who were so kind. Like, they made sure they took me out to get a wardrobe for my job interviews. They got my resume professionally done. They introduced me to my next job through Lindy Johnson, one of the original black technokraties, and I ended up at Inc.com and Fast Company, not as a writer, but as a community moderation manager, because they were trying to build out social networks. So I was
Mhm.
doing that, but I hustled my way into writing because that's what I wanted to do. And then I see Lynn with these funky Beats headphones, and she's got these bad sneakers on, and she is just the epitome of cool. And I'm like, that I want to do that.
Mhm.
And so I started doing more and more writing, but again, layoffs. So this time I went freelance, but I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a tech writer. So I started doing tech writing and a little bit of entertainment writing for the likes of BET.com, Black Web 2.0. And I did that for 3 years. And I kept applying to this job, my dream job, at this little publication called Laptop Mag. And the first two times I could not get a call back, did not get a call back. But every time that job popped up, I applied. And the third time was a charm, and I got that call back, and by then I had the experience that I could built in where they didn't really have to train me. Like, yes, like they would mold my writing to how they needed it to be, but I already knew tech. So it was easy for I made it easy for them to bring me on, and I've been with Laptop ever since. So now this is 13 years. I started at the bottom as a staff writer. Now I'm the editor in chief.
Amazing story. Amazing story. Now, if people want to find out how to get connected to Laptop, how they go about doing that?
Of course, go to laptopmag.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at laptopmag. We are starting an Instagram. I actually am doing a clubhouse called Hotline Tech with one of the editors in chiefs of my sister sites, where we one day we talk about tech news. The other day, because we're doing Tuesdays and Thursdays, the other day we talk about how to get into the industry, and how like if you're a young writer, to send how to pitch, how to do if you're a PR agent, how to get in contact with us, or how to do a really compelling cover letter. Those things that you typically have to just stumble through and hope and wish and pray. I want to make sure that people have this information. Or if you're feeling froggy, if you like, please let me like pitch me. Like, I'm on Twitter, Miss Smith 11, MISS Smith 11. I am always looking for dynamic writers that are passionate about tech. I'm always looking for the next new voice in tech, and I love working with inexperienced writers.
Oh, well, we want to thank you for being with us here on social justice. And of course, we'll get people connected to you. And hopefully, we'll have an opportunity to stay connected, find out more about closing this digital divide, and definitely increasing the amount of people involved in the tech world. It's a huge field, and we need more like you. Thank you so much for being with us, Sherri L. Smith.
Not a problem. Thank you for having.